Ladies and gentlemen, FootballScoop Podcast is back. Week 2 is in the books. There are other things happening off the field. A very interesting weekend of college football. Actually, a fascinating weekend of college football, an awesome weekend of college football. I want to start with a couple of games, then I want to talk about some coaching and some relationship type matters. I got 3 games I want to talk about, gentlemen, and then I'll bring you guys in. I want to talk Texas, Alabama. I want to talk about Miami, Texas A&M, and I feel like the whole world's talking about prime, so we got to talk about Colorado a little bit. Let's start with Texas, Alabama. Zach, you are our resident Longhorn. Give me some thoughts on that game.
I mean, what we saw is something we've never really seen ever in the Nick Saban era, which a visiting team coming into Bryant-Denny Stadium and win going away, and a team that really imposed its will. And I thought, the fourth quarter spoke volumes. It was 13. Texas was stuck on 13 points for a long time, and they got 4 straight drives where they didn't score, and it seemed like they were going to have to end the game with 13. Then Alabama scores to go up 16-13 late third quarter. Texas goes down, scores in 3 plays, intercepts Alabama, scores in the next play. Then Alabama strikes back and to make it 27-24. From that point forward, it goes Texas 7 plays, 75 yards, touchdown. Alabama forced a 3 and out, and then a 12 play, 34 yard, 7-minute, 14-second drive in which Texas forced Alabama to use all 3 of its timeouts and never gave the ball back. I mean, if they wanted to, they probably could have scored on that drive. They had some touchdowns that turned into field goals with some drops. Like, this was a emphatic victory that in a lot of ways was not as close as the 10-point margin. And it's truly something that we have not seen since the Nick Saban dynasty first got rolling.
Zach, it's September 12th, 2023. Are you ready to make a declaration? Is Texas?
No. I thought Chris Fowler said it perfectly. He said Texas is 2-0 and not willing to say any more than that. I think it's funny afterwards, a lot of the discussion since Saturday night has turned into, well, Alabama's clearly down, and this Alabama, the dynasty's clearly over, and who knows how much this win over Alabama will mean. Which, I mean, it could prove to be true. Like, this Alabama team, they could be 9-3, they could be 11-1. I believe either one of those things. But nobody was saying that going into this game. Like, I think everybody picked Alabama. I picked Alabama. It's not like people were calling this beforehand. And so for Texas to be better than Alabama in a lot of almost every phase of the game, especially at the lines of scrimmage, like, I thought, this hyped Alabama offensive line massively underperformed. The Texas offensive line overperformed their expectations. Didn't really run the ball great, didn't really try to run the ball that much until the fourth quarter in that last drive when they had to run the ball and they ran it right down Alabama's throats. I mean, that and the Quinn Ewers deep balls are what was the key to the game.
So John Brice picked this game correctly. JB, I give you the floor.
Well, first of all, I'm going to say I think Texas is real. I had somebody at Notre Dame ask me this week who I would have as my top 5 teams thus far that I've seen, and Texas is as complete as any team out there right now. As you already astutely noted, it is merely September 12th. We're 3 games at most, 2 games for many people into this season, but Texas is as complete as anybody, because what we talked about last week on the pod is they're so physically improved. Their stature, as it was put to me, on the offensive and defensive lines is so much better. Quinn Ewers, college football has never been more quarterback dictated. Quinn Ewers is playing at an extremely high level. They've got great skill. Texas needs to run the football better, but there's no way this is not going to be a quality win. I also don't think there's any way that Alabama is done losing, but it's an excellent victory for Texas. It stamps Texas as a legitimate college football playoff contender. And once again, from a complete team standpoint, the only team I think that has looked as good as Texas right now is Georgia, and Georgia doesn't have a quality win like Texas does. I've seen Ohio State very closely. They're very flawed. We already know Scott's Bayou Bengals have been exposed as flawed. Not that their season is over, but flawed. Michigan is really good, but I mean, look, Michigan, Georgia, Texas, they all share a lot of similar characteristics. They've all got really good offensive lines playing right now, and Georgia, we're going to learn more about its quarterback, but Michigan and Texas obviously feel really good about their quarterbacks. And to me, Texas's response after going down 16-13 and Bryant-Denny going crazy, and they had the whole LED light show going for the transition from third to fourth quarter. That was a big boy response. That was a mature team response. And then they physically whipped Alabama on both lines of scrimmage. And when it was still slightly in doubt and it was a 3rd and 7 and people wondered with about 5 minutes left and Saban had burned all of his timeouts and people wondered if that would be the time that Sark had to dial up a throw, they ran it literally straight up the middle, through an A or a B gap and easily got the first down, and that was the ball game.
So, JB, do you think Texas' win over Alabama was more impressive than Florida State over LSU?
Yes, I do. I absolutely do.
Yes.
Because Florida State LSU was technically a neutral site game in Orlando, and this is Bryant-Denny. This is where Nick Saban had never had a double-digit loss, and to your point, it absolutely could have been a 17-point loss. I mean, look, they went into Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa there by Denny chimes, won by 10, and ended the game in victory formation. That's dominance.
Coming into the season, my 3 questions for Texas were quarterback play, the interior of the offensive line, and pass rush / third down defense. And I checked the numbers coming in. They're massively improved in pass rush, massively improved in third down defense. The interior of the offensive line was not good against Rice, but they were fantastic against Alabama. The clips going around of DJ Campbell pushing an Alabama linebacker after the play, and you see a lot of Alabama players responding to me like, what happened to our program that this was allowed to happen? Cole Kubelik shared a great clip of Cole Hudson, the other guard, with a nasty block on an Alabama defensive end. So they answered the bell, and Quinn Ewers answered the bell a big, big way on Saturday night.
Texas's skill players were really impressive. The way they were taking the top off the Alabama defense is something we haven't seen in a long time. I thought Sark's use of RPOs, little arrow screens with a tight end leaking out of the backfield, was critical in pulling some guys out of run fits and helping the run and throw game a little bit. But I was on record last week saying I thought it was a coming out party for Alabama. I'm sure no one's forgotten that. The look on your guys' faces when I said that. I really thought, Alabama would do a great job controlling the game. The quarterback being a game manager, as Nick Saban so often does when there's question marks there, and they didn't do any of that. Texas looked like the best team from start to finish, and that was no more evident than that last series when they milked 7 minutes off the clock against a Nick Saban team. That should never happen. So
I was not going to mention that. I was not going to play that clip. I was offering you some grace, and you brought it up. That was very manly of you to bring that up.
To Doug's point, I thought one of the key plays of the game was when Jahdae Barron intercepted Jalen Milroe early, because after that, Alabama really seemed to abandon a lot of their intermediate passing game. And at that point, it was a lot of either Milroe's going to scramble or he's going to hit a deep ball or we're not going to move the ball. And of course, they hit some of those, which they're going to do. But Alabama, they couldn't run the ball with their running backs for the most part, so their ability to impose their will really vanished after that.
I'm going to shift gears here. I know Doug and JB and I loved Mario Cristobal's retooling of his staff, bringing in Lance Guidry, bringing in Shannon Dawson. I know at least one of us picked Miami in this game. I picked Miami in this game.
Yeah.
I knew that happened. I felt pretty good about that one, to be honest. And I don't know where Texas A&M is. I don't know who Texas A&M is. I got questions all over the place. JB, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, that one was pretty surprising to me in that Texas A&M had control early. It had a couple of different double-digit leads, and then it was just meltdown city. It was more of the same. And I can't remember where I saw it or exactly who said it. I'd agreed with it. I'd made a similar point in that 1 through 85, there are very few assembled college football rosters right now, in theory, as talented as Texas A&M's. Even with some of the departures they've had from their much ballyhooed signing classes of recent years, they're still a ridiculously talented roster, and they look more like mercenaries than any sort of cohesive team. There is not, I don't think, a lot of fabric to what they're doing. I don't think there's a lot of not that they need to be singing Kumbaya, but this does not strike me as a team that would walk out of the tunnel in linked arms and absolutely mean what the symbolic gesture of walking out of the tunnel in linked arms. They're just very disjointed. They're not a cohesive unit whatsoever, despite all of that talent. They've got time to fix it. But for anyone who says there's not pressure on Jimbo this year, I couldn't disagree more. There's extreme pressure on Jimbo this year. It's year 6. They shouldn't be losing to a program that was 5-7 last year in the 15th game of Mario Cristobal's rebuild. I don't care where the program is. You're supposed to be the super established program at that point, 3 games into your 6th year. And it was a complete role reversal. Now, their season's not over. Miami's going to win a lot more games. That doesn't mean I think Miami's all the way back or going to win the ACC. That won't stand as a terrible loss on the surface, but when you look at everything Texas A&M has done in recent years, it's a terrible loss. There's no other way to label that, especially, again, when you talk about the Jimbo Fisher, Bobby Petrino dynamic, where they go from here. They gave up 48 points, and I don't have the stats right in front of me, but it's been a long time since Miami scored 48 points on a non-conference Power 5 foe. A really long time. So just a terrible, dreadful performance from Texas A&M. And again, they've got issues. They've got real issues that aren't going to be fixed in a week. It doesn't mean they can't be fixed because of the talent of that roster. But as impressed as I was with Miami, I would argue I was more disappointed in Texas A&M.
And no team's recruited better over the past 3 years, you could argue, than Jimbo and Texas A&M. And now they've lost a handful of kids, or more than a handful of kids, to the portal the past 2 years probably. But the way that Miami was able to push the ball down the field with explosive plays, I think they're 25th nationally right now, and taking the top off. And Shannon Dawson has done an outstanding job with the athletes that they're able to get there at Miami, and using all the field and getting speed on the field. That was no more evident than against a highly touted, at least recruiting classes. Whether they developed or not is a conversation for another time. But Miami looked really, really good.
Yeah, I think the A&M secondary was a weakness coming into the year. Even the A&M people would have told you that. But I never would have thought with the overflowing of talent on the D-line that they would allow Tyler Van Dyke to be as comfortable as he was. 21 of 30, 374 yards, 12.5 per attempt, 5 touchdowns, no picks. Like I would not think that was possible with the depth of talent that A&M has along the defensive line, no matter who you're playing at secondary. I mean, the Miami offensive line whipped A&M up front, and that should not happen with what they have up front.
Zach, it's early, right? September 12th. None of us are such great prognosticators that we know how A&M is going to finish their season. If so, we'd be just raking Las Vegas money every month, and we wouldn't be doing this. Anyway, if A&M were to finish something like 8-4, Jimbo's still head coach next year?
That's the $1 million question. I think if it's 6-6, 7-5, the answer is obvious. 9-3 or better, the answer is obvious. 8-4 is kind of the gray area.
I'm not sure the answer is obvious on either of those ends. You got a lot of money involved and a lot of frustration involved. I'm not sure. 6-6, you still got the money question. 9-3, I'm not sure the answer is obvious, to be honest. I'm really not.
I think it completely depends on the tenor of the 9 wins and the 3 losses in that scenario. I think you can't just pick a record and say he's automatically safe with this. Other than like a 10-win season, it wouldn't matter. He's automatically safe. And I think a 9-win season, he would honestly be automatically safe because he's lost a game by 15 points. But if you stack up 9 wins and you're going to the postseason with a chance to win a 10th game, and you've got your AD on record very publicly to multiple outlets saying we didn't do this for a 1-year flash in the pan, we're building a program to be sustained, then Jimbo has to feel good. But if it's 8-4 and you have 3 additional games where by the fourth quarter Texas A&M's not in it whatsoever, especially let's say those 3 games are like LSU, Alabama, and Ole Miss, then yeah, you got real issues for Jimbo.
Coming up on the A&M schedule, you got ULM at home, then Auburn at home, Arkansas at a neutral site. I certainly wouldn't chalk that up as an automatic W. Alabama at home, I don't think that's an automatic W or an automatic L at this point. At Tennessee, tough to see them winning there. When you can't win at Miami, to think you can go into Neyland Stadium when you've lost 7 straight road games. Home against South Carolina, at Ole Miss. Lanes had their number. Mississippi State at home, Abilene Christian, and then at LSU. The fact of the matter is A&M has lost 7 straight road games. We're almost at 2 calendar years since they won their last true road game, and that was at Missouri. So you got to go to Neyland, you got to go to Oxford, you got to go to Baton Rouge. I mean, if you lose those games and sweep your home games, you're talking 8-4, and it's not like you can chalk up a win over Alabama either. So I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but this is by no means an easy schedule for the Aggies moving forward.
They signed up for this. Let's go. All right, Doug. Coach Prime continues to be at the forefront of national, college football discussions, conversations. He's driving the energy. People want to talk about him, want to see him, want to watch him. He took care of Matt Rule's team. We got Colorado State, right? He wins that one pretty easily. Colorado State's just not great right now. Thoughts?
Yeah, I really thought that after watching them against TCU week 1, I thought Nebraska and Matt Rule would be going there and be able to physically give them some issues. I thought Colorado was more kind of a finesse and flash team, and Nebraska would come in and be able to pound it and grind it out and maybe pull away in the fourth quarter just based on physicality. And I'm saying it again for the second time on the podcast, completely wrong. Prime had his guys ready to go. He always finds a way or manufactures a way to motivate his guys. And they went out and balled out. And, there was a point in time where Nebraska had cut the lead. And then Colorado ends up pulling away. I think it was also the most watched game of last weekend, which that tells you something with Texas, Alabama also on the schedule in terms of attracting eyeballs. So once again, he's proved that, he's legit. I mean, Prime's legit, and they'll blow the doors off this weekend and go into a highly touted matchup, I think, next week against Oregon.
I think Travis Hunter maybe played 136 snaps or 126 snaps this past weekend after playing like 114 or 120 the opening week. That's fascinating to me. There's no way I believe that's sustainable across a 12-game schedule. And perhaps this is the week that Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders both barely play into the third quarter. I think that's an extreme likelihood. But to Doug's point about the eyeballs on the television, it's significant, not just because it was a noon game, which is not when you expect most games to be that heavily viewed, but also there were other good noon games that they were going up against, including Notre Dame at noon. And nobody, regardless of anyone's opinion on Notre Dame, they tend to attract eyeballs. So for Colorado and Deion to outdraw Notre Dame in that window tells you the intrigue that's surrounding him. I think I also saw maybe the Colorado AD or someone else, even after just the week 1 victory, there was already like a tangible $500,000 net impact from Deion just in increased revenues that quickly into the season. Not even counting in season tickets sold or any of that. It was literally like a $500,000 net impact on revenues 1 week into the season. So his team is moving the needle on the field, and he is continuing his role as the college football's most polarizing, but arguably crazy like a fox circus conductor right now.
Right,
Deion's quote on in regards to JB and Travis Hunter's snap count was he's being questioned by people that can't cook and answer the phone at the same time. So I think Deion thinks Travis Hunter's snap count is sustainable, but we'll see.
JB, I don't want to stay in this too long, but why do you say he's the most polarizing guy in college football? Other than the way he came into a terrible team with not personnel that couldn't win at the Power 5 level, and he made a bunch of changes. I realized that the way he did it maybe is weird, but why is he polarizing?
He's not polarizing for me. I think you guys know that. I don't know anybody who writes more Deion content than I do. I did some of those. I did some of those SWAC Zooms with him last year. It was a lot of fun. But he's polarizing to the industry, to his peers. There's no question. Obviously, we're seeing Matt Rule responding to some of that this week on the heels of Nebraska's loss there. He's polarizing when you have guys like Pat Narduzzi in the spring and others calling out the way that he's assembled his roster. He's polarizing because, again, I've made this point, I'll continue to make it, because high school coaches are really worried about what it's going to do to their core players who would have a shot at college football at the FBS level that are now being impacted by the transfer portal, especially when you have a guy with 86 new players on his roster and they're 2-0. They're getting ready to be 3-0. Depending on how every other game shakes out this weekend, they could be 3-0 and a top 12 team going into that showdown with Oregon. So again, he's not polarizing for me. I love it. I love the entertainment. I love the brash approach. And I love that he also has a lot of substance to him and truly believes in helping the kids that he's coaching, as we saw last week in the piece with him talking to Jimmy Horn Jr.'s father from prison. So he's not polarizing for me. He's 100% polarizing for the industry of college football. And he's also inducing a lot of anxiety and nerves for the rest of college football, because coaches, the clock has been reset already. You don't get 5 years to rebuild a program anymore. You're barely getting 4 in a lot of cases. And you'll be hard pressed to get 3 if Deion's roster flip continues on a remote pace of this. I mean, look, if Deion and Colorado are 9-3 at the end of this year, everybody's going to be figuring out how to flip the portal even more in their favor.
I've been to a lot of football games. I've been to a lot of football programs. I've met with a lot of coaches. I know a lot of coaches very personally. When James Franklin went to Vanderbilt, I went to that game, that season opener. I can't remember if this was 2009, 2010, 2011, somewhere in there. When they went back and forth with Ole Miss at Vandy in Nashville. And what James Franklin was doing was so contrary to what the rest of the SEC was doing. And everybody's like, this guy's crazy. What he's doing, this is too hype. This is nuts. People don't act like this. And he did that at Vanderbilt. He won 9 games, right? He just did things different, and that's okay. Prime's doing things different, and that's okay. I mean, I love what Prime's doing for the game. I understand there are it's different, and it's outside the norm, and it does what he's doing changes the whole. You graduate high school and you go to a college, and you're there for 4 years. It's changed that. But that's not the path that everybody needs to take. So
and
it's real life. Let's deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, on the flip side, Mike Elko won 9 games year one without, dipping into the portal a ton. He developed the guys that were there, and so that doesn't get the headlines that Prime does, because Prime, is doing the the sexy or the in thing or whatever, and Alco did it his own way. But I think where you're going to start to get in trouble is dudes that take these jobs that try to copy the Prime thing, and they're not Prime because there's only one. That's where things are going to crash and burn bad.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, let's transition to off the field. We've got 2 things left. I want to talk Mel Tucker, and then we'll talk Art Briles. Mel Tucker's situation. Everything about this is strange. The fact that Michigan State has known about this for this long, the fact that they just kind of caved because it became public, that's not how they'll describe it, but that's what happened. Who wants to take the lead, talking me through this situation, and we give some thoughts on it? Anybody?
I'll take the lead. I mean, look, it's we've all been around sports media a long enough time to cover a lot of absolutely insane stories, and this is up there at the pinnacle of insane stories. And without diving too much into murky waters or anything else, this behavior, this documented behavior that Mel Tucker has admitted to while being, I think, on a university trip as a leader of young men, as a guy charged with shaping young men, is unbelievably reckless and careless. And regardless of wherever anyone comes down on this whole sordid situation, that element to me is undeniable. That element to me is it's reckless because he's been entrusted to shape these young men, a lot of whom come from very socioeconomically disadvantaged, hardscrabble situations, and it's reckless for his own family and his own livelihood. And that to me might be the singular word that I would use to describe the situation, is completely and utterly reckless.
It's conduct unbecoming of a head coach of a major program at a state public institution. It's conduct unbecoming. Those are the grounds for terminating him. Whether or not, she's alleging this was non-consensual phone sex, which is very bizarre. I'm not sure what that even means, but it's conduct unbecoming. You're having these late night conversations with this lady, a lot of them. They go on for a very long time. It comes out publicly. Like, what are you doing? You're a leader of men. You want us to entrust our 17-year-olds to come be in your hands, and you're going to mold them into the men they need to be. And you're having odd late night phone sex outside of your marriage. What? This is just, everything about it's weird. Sorry.
I mean, just going back to Saturday night, the ESPN story came out first, and they were like, the identity, at least as I read it, was not known to ESPN. They were going to sue through the Freedom of Information Act to try and get more information. And I was like, okay, so could be anybody. It's going to be a while before we may never know who's accusing him. And then like immediately after USA Today, and it's Brenda Tracy, and it's one of those eyes pop out of your head deals where it's like, of all people, like obviously allegedly sexually harassing anyone doesn't make it, better or worse. But I just come back to of all people. And I'm not, Mel Tucker's camp put out that statement yesterday, and I'm not smart enough to discern if they're trying to get him to get his job back, or if this is just angling for to defend him against being fired for cause, and there's going to be some sort of settlement. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to say that, but it's hard to see him coming back from this.
Yeah, I think you might, in some atmospheres, be able to survive this. You do not survive it in East Lansing after the Larry Nassar deal unfolded, 5-10 years ago. I think it's increasingly difficult to survive in that climate with the allegations out there right now.
I just don't see how you do. Brenda Tracy is pushing, she's publicly challenging him to take the stand. And what she knows is if he has to take the stand, he has to admit to all the conversations they had. It exposes him even further to conduct unbecoming, and thus he gets fired. And she knows he can't take that risk, so she's really got him in a corner. The facts have him in a corner, and she's playing it appropriately from that standpoint.
And again, reckless or conduct unbecoming, all of those things they may not be covered by specific name or deed or act in a coach's contract, but virtually every coach at this sort of level or beyond has a moral turpitude clause in his or her contract. And to Doug's point, especially with the backdrop of the heinous acts already that have occurred at Michigan State because of Dr. Larry Nassar, there's all sorts of issues with Mel Tucker's behavior.
Yeah, what happened? The whole Larry Nassar stuff. That's unconscionable. That is imposing your will and your things, your ability to influence who you are in life on these young ladies. That's you go to jail for life for that. What Mel Tucker did was conduct unbecoming or moral. He was a bad leader, and this isn't you go to jail for this. This is you had non-consensual phone sex. You had a relationship. This isn't you go to jail. This is you're not the appropriate man to be leading our football team. I don't see how he ever coaches another play at Michigan State. Okay, on that light note, let's move along. All right. So Art Briles, as the head coach of Baylor, there were a lot of allegations, a lot of very public allegations. The Baylor thing ended in a fire. I mean, not fire. It just went up in flames. Many, many years ago. Art Briles has been out of ball for years, coaching Italy every now and then, doing whatever he's doing. His daughter married Jeff Lebby. Jeff was on his staff at Baylor. Jeff Lebby goes on, makes a couple of moves, really did exceedingly well at Ole Miss, gets hired at his alma mater at Oklahoma. He's the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. Saturday night, after the game, Art Briles, his father-in-law, his wife's father, grandchildren to his kids, comes down the field with his Art Briles' daughter and the grandkids, and they're out there. And there's a big stink about this. And I would love to hear thoughts on this. Zach, I'm going to ask you to take the lead on this one.
Yeah, I mean, Oklahoma, certainly understandable that they don't want their team, their brand to be associated with Art Briles, but it's a little bit hard for me to take because if you were that serious about distancing your brand from Art Briles, then, I mean, what did you expect when you hired Jeff Lebby? You know, if you were that serious about it, then you would have never hired him in the first place if you didn't want your program to be associated with him. So the moral indignitude and that we're disappointed, we're handling it. Like, obviously, it seems like they were clear to Jeff, like, hey, we're hiring you. We don't want Art anywhere near around our field, our program, where he's not coming to practice. And then it seems like he violated that by bringing Art on the field. But the stomping of the feet, the grandstanding reads a little bit false to me on Joe Castiglione and Brent Venables' part.
I don't understand why you say it's clearly understandable that Oklahoma wouldn't want Art Briles associated with their program. Tell me what you mean by that.
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is he's toxic. Southern Miss tried to hire him. That was nixed due to internal and external protests. Grambling tried to hire him. That was nixed. The Hamilton Tiger Cats tried to hire him. That was nixed. So clearly the collective public has decided that this guy cannot coach in college football, professional football in North America anymore. And so to have him on the field in OU gear.
There's a huge difference between being charged with being the leader of a program and recruiting young men and having oversight of young men on a campus. There's a huge difference there from being a grandfather who comes to a game and cheers from the stands and then walks down there and gives his kid, his son-in-law, which is effectively his son, give him a hug.
Yeah,
I don't understand this at all.
Yeah, I agree. And again, on to Joe Castiglione's part, if you were that serious about it, then you never would have hired Art to begin with. I'm sure I can't imagine that the fact that he was on the field in OU gear, I'm sure is what caught the reaction. Like if he had been in the stands in regular gear, whatever, it probably wouldn't have been this way. But you're towing an extremely thin line there if you're Oklahoma, considering this guy's family.
This is just like social media outrage, silliness. Like he wasn't brought in to talk to the team. He wasn't talking to the team after practice or hanging out at practice. He was there wearing a logoed shirt because his son-in-law coaches for the team and came down on the field to say congratulations. Like this is not that big of a deal, guys.
I completely agree with Doug. I would be hard pressed to agree with Doug more. As much as I disagreed with Doug saying it would be Bama's coming out party. Sorry, I had to get that in there. I wholly agree with Doug in this situation, especially when, again, he's not being asked to coach. He didn't address the team. He wasn't on the field the entire game. Initially, I thought that was the uproar, that he had been on the sideline with a field pass for the entire game. No, that was not the case at all. What kind of message are we sending if it's being alleged or decried as this guy out there supporting his family? Aren't we trying to be parts of, and I'm saying we as a college football collective or college athletics collective, or certainly Doug, who's shaping young men every day? Don't you want family to be a bedrock of things? Isn't that the best path forward? So yeah, I get why you can't hire Art Briles. Although I would also contend, how long is a long enough sentence for de facto sentence before Art Briles can ever try to coach again? And how many people have said Art Briles positively impacted their lives through the years? But beyond that, beyond the coaching scope, I don't think the public has a right to tell anybody when they can see their family. And that, to me, is what this is about.
I thought it was embarrassing that Oklahoma officials made Jeff Lebby give that apology yesterday. You're Jeff Lebby, and someone comes to you and says, hey, I know you defended it yesterday, but now I need you to go out there today and say, you know what, I apologize for not recognizing the wrong in giving my father-in-law, and after the game's over, come down here and run on the field with your grandkids. That is shameful by Oklahoma officials.
I think the questions. I think there need to be further questions here for Joe Castiglione and Brent Venables. To me, it's like, okay, so if you're that repulsed, rightly or wrongly, by Art Briles, then why did you hire Jeff Lebby in the first place? Like, they're trying to toe a line here that I think is false.
If you're Jeff Lebby, you coach there next year?
I was going to ask the same question. Is this enough to ruffle his feathers enough to be like, I'm not dealing with this?
There were Oklahoma people calling for him to be fired Saturday night.
I would ask, how much tertiary, incidental, peripheral damage is this heaping upon Jeff Lebby once again? Look, this is an Oklahoma team that rang up 73 points on hapless Arkansas State and Butch Jones in week 1, had another really strong victory this past week. I think we've all believed that Jeff Lebby, I know I have absolutely believed Jeff Lebby has been on a path to become an FBS head coach. How much is this whole manufactured prisoner of the moment situation impacting the long-term livelihood of Jeff Lebby? I don't know that we have the answer to that question right now, but I don't think there's any doubt that this is significantly and negatively impacting Jeff Lebby from some college athletics director or group of college leaders who might have been watching Oklahoma thinking this guy could bring the excitement and stuff that we want for our program sooner rather than later. And now this whole mess has blown up. And I just think it's incredibly detrimental to Jeff Lebby's career right now. All because he was trying to be a family man and have his father-in-law, who's been a big influence on him, on the field to hug his family after a game.
I have absolutely no idea if Art Briles or Art's daughter bought him that Oklahoma pullover he was wearing, or if Oklahoma football gave it to him, or if Jeff Lebby gave it to him. Who cares? Everyone in that stadium is wearing crimson, right? He's wearing Oklahoma stuff. Who cares? This is petty. This is embarrassing for Oklahoma officials, in my opinion. Alrighty. Any last words before we get out of here, gents?
Nope.
Fun stuff today.
Nice and light.
Yeah.
College football, FootballScoop Podcast. You never know where we're going to take you guys. Week 3 is better than everybody's telling you. There's some great games out there, and I will hear no disparagement from you people. How do we do in picks this week, guys? Anybody knows?
I know one of us got Alabama, Texas correct. I didn't have a great week. I didn't have a great week beyond that, but I don't have a great golf game, and I'm wearing a Masters hat. So I'm doing the same thing with that Alabama-Texas pick.
The view from the top feels pretty good. I'm just saying. That's all I got. Love you guys. All right. Football Scoop Podcast. We're out. Tell all your friends. Get some more people to listen to this thing. We can only handle 10, 20, 30, 40,000 a day. Let's go.